Hey Sweet Brides, my name is Megan with Socialite Sweet Events. Today we are going to be talking about how to plan your wedding during the COVID-19. This is a very important topic for a lot of you guys who are planning your wedding, especially if your wedding falls in the spring-summer time of 2020. Now, I know that, first of all, I just want to say that my heart goes out to you and I am so sorry that this is happening. One of the best days of your life is under serious attack right now, and I'm so sorry for that. I do hope that you have time to watch this video, write down all the tips that I'm going to be giving you guys, and if you still feel like you need some help at the end and to sort through things, I highly encourage you to talk with a wedding planner. Before you begin, there are some questions that you should ask yourself. You really need to sit down with your partner and think these things through, look at the CDC guidelines, look at what your state-by-state mandate is, because it's different for every state and every community. So one of the questions that you should be asking is, should you postpone or should you cancel? This is one of the biggest questions right now in the industry as a whole. A lot of your wedding vendors at this time, what I've noticed with my clients is that they're being very flexible and they're trying to work with you guys. However, with that being said, they still are a business and they're trying their hardest, and this is happening to them too. So please, when you're looking at your options, please keep that in mind that many of the vendors that you're working with are small business owners who they're not big corporations that can just shell out money if something, goes wrong. They need to take a look at their situation as well and see if it makes sense for them financially, if they can do what it is that you're asking of them. So please keep that in mind. However, I know all of the vendors that I'm working with are super adamant about giving the best service and working with their customers. And I think that you'll find that across the board as a whole. So that is a really great thing. So going back to postponing or canceling, I would suggest that you postpone for right now. Depending on your date, however, I wouldn't jump to just canceling. The reason being is that when you cancel, you will lose potentially a lot of money. When you're canceling, you'll have to go back to all of your contracts and see for sure what it is that they're saying. However, generally speaking, when you cancel compared to postponing, you lose your non-refundable deposit and potentially any money that you've already paid to that vendor. This is something that you'll have to look at on an individual contract basis, but this is just generally what I'm seeing in the industry right now. Another thing to look at are alternatives. So do you still need to move? Maybe you need to move forward with your wedding and you have to get married on that date, or whatever the reason being, you have to get married in this time frame. Well, look to see what your options are. Some courthouses are actually closed right now, so you can't even do justice of the peace. However, there are private officiants who are still doing ceremonies, and if you contact certain wedding planners, I being one of them, we do specialize in small, intimate weddings. So that is something to think about as well if you need to get married. Another thing to think about is, depending on your state, how many people are they allowing in a social distancing room at the same time? For my state, it's less than 10. For other states, it's less than 25 or 50. So that's another thing you'll have to look at. Are you willing to cut your guest list down to an amount that falls within the CDC guidelines and your state guidelines? One of the things that I highly recommend is going back to your contracts. You should have a contract for every single vendor that you're working with. And look at those contracts, look at two things. Look at their postponement policy and look at their cancellation policy. This will give you a big insight into how you need to move about rescheduling your day or moving forward with your day, whichever you choose. There's no right or wrong way as long as you're following the CDC and your state mandated guidelines. So here are some questions that you should ask when looking through these contracts and also talking with your vendors individually. When is the cutoff date for a cancellation or postponement? This is important because you don't want to go right up to the wire, and 3 days before your wedding, you want to reschedule. There are no vendors that I know of that will accept that. A lot of times it's anywhere from 2 weeks up to 90 days. So that's something you'll have to ask your vendor. Another thing to ask is, what would happen if you decided to postpone or cancel? What are your options? And moving forward, what kind of money are you looking at getting back if you're canceling? And if you're postponing, what dates do they have available in the future? And will there be an additional charge? Because even though you're postponing, a lot of times these vendors will charge you an additional amount for moving the date. And there is good reason behind that. However, some people are even waiving that fee because of the situation. But it's something you should know. For example, let's say you wanted to move your wedding from a Sunday in the middle of spring to a holiday such as July 4th. You're probably going to face some upcharges for that. That's something you should know beforehand when you're rescheduling. You should also take note of all of the dates that your vendors are available in the future so that you can match them up if you do decide to postpone and you need to move forward with your current vendors to not lose any money, to gather those dates and match up which ones do work so that you have the least amount of monies lost. Another thing to keep in mind when you're postponing is that at that time when you're asking each vendor, you will be asking them to secure 2 dates because you haven't necessarily canceled your original date, but you're also asking them what date they are available for. They may request some sort of deposit down for that because now you're securing 2 of their days where they need to gather staff, resources, anything that is involved with having those dates secured for you. So they just know that they may ask for a deposit. In the middle of this, I have tons more information to tell you, but if you're getting overwhelmed, do not get overwhelmed. The more you resist this, the more it is going to be a problem. Embrace this and make it part of your story that you can tell your kids and your grandbabies someday. It will be a story for sure, and they will want to know every single detail because this is super, super unprecedented times. I'm sure you've heard that so many times, but it is true. So make this part of your story. Don't resist it. Try and go with the flow as much as you can because I promise that will help you have a more level head throughout the whole planning process than if you were to start freaking out. So please find some way to calm yourself down, whatever that is, meditation, reading, watching TV. Take that time for yourself and don't get so overwhelmed. And if you are that overwhelmed, talk to a planner because they will help you. So the first thing that you're going to want to do in this second part after you look at your contracts and talking with your vendors is to talk with your venue. That is your most important thing that you need to talk with if you don't have a planner. If you have a planner, talking with your planner is absolutely number one. Then you need to talk to your venue and see what it is that they are offering or doing for their clients. In some states, they are completely closed down and they will not open their doors. And then you'll need to see what it is that they're offering a different date or however it is they're packaging this potential crisis right now. So after you talk with your planner and your venue and you get some sort of an idea of what's happening and what your options are, then you should go on to your main vendors, your bigger venue, maybe even your high priority vendors. These are ones such as catering, photographer, florist. These are ones who you're probably spending the most money on and the ones who need to order things in order for it to be available for your day. So talk with them, see what the options are with them. Many times I'm seeing people, if you let them know before 30 to 60 days ahead of time, that they're willing to move the date and everything would be the same. It would be as if you're just moving the date. Everything will be the same and that's it. One thing to keep in mind though is different seasons. So let's say you were talking with the florist and you really wanted peonies for your wedding. And for that time it was in season, so it was a lower cost. If you're now moving your wedding to fall or winter and you want those peonies, it may be a higher cost. And honestly, peonies, I don't even know if they're an all thing. I'm just throwing that out there. So if any florist wants to pop on in here and and correct me, that's fine. But that's just an example. Another thing is your design and decor. Maybe you picked colors that were more spring and summer related, colorful, pastel, and now you're moving to a fall winter wedding where it's more muted and richer colors. So you may need to completely change your whole design. And this is where a wedding designer or planner really comes into play, because they will help you with all of those small details that you're not even thinking of. Because right now, I'm pretty sure that most of you who are thinking about moving your wedding do think that you can just move everything. It'll be the same. It's just a different date. But that's not the case. There are things like this, like food that's in season. Your caterers, they suggest food to you that's in season, so it's more cost effective for you. Now we're moving to a different season. Your florist with the flowers, we already talked about. Photographer, they may be in doing a completely different thing. They might not even be in the state at that point. A lot of photographers will go off and travel in winter because it's their off time, and they'll do photo sessions throughout the state. So those are things that you need to take into consideration and things you need to ask each vendor when you're talking with them. After you've talked with your high priority vendors, it is time to move on to the secondary vendors. These are the people like the cake, decor and rentals, officiant, what's another one? People who don't show up until that day. It won't likely have a lot of changing that they need to do. They just need to be kept in the loop, know the times, know the differences, and where it is that they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. So talk with them. The DJ's another one. People who don't show up until that day, you're pretty much not talking to them until a couple weeks before the wedding. You haven't done a whole bunch of planning. They just show up there the day of, and that's it. Things they're not prepping until a couple days before the wedding. Those are your secondary vendors, and they generally will just move everything, and you won't need to do a ton of extra planning with them through your new rescheduled date. Next thing that you should do is finalize your dates and plans with all of your vendors. Make sure that everyone is on the same page. This is where, again, that planner will come in handy and will help you be the point person. That's what we call them, a point person, to talk to everybody down the line and make sure that everything is right while you are just worrying about being beautiful and having fun on your day. Another thing that you need to do is communicate with your guests. This is a hard one for some people because depending on their plans and how they're changing, they are very, very scared to talk with their guests because they don't want to disappoint them and they're afraid people are going to be mad at them. I can assure you that people understand. They realize they're dealing with different things, but on the same level, okay? Some people's jobs are at risk, or some people have to stay home with their kids. Everyone is going through a really stressful time, so I can guarantee that people will understand completely as long as you communicate. Make sure you do that communication, because if you don't, people will get frustrated. All in all, I hope that these tips really helped you plan your wedding during this COVID-19, and I am here for all of my Corona couples. For those of you who need help, make sure you look at all of the videos that I have on my channel, and it'll help you just in your normal daily planning. This was really geared towards COVID-19 and the effects that it's having on the wedding industry and our clients. And I just wanted to let you know that there are options available for you no matter what you decide to do. If you decide to postpone, cancel, or go more intimate, those are all things that we can help you work with at Socialite Suite Events. And if you do need more help, don't be afraid to reach out. I will have an email template as well for you to look at when you're reaching out to your vendors, something that you can say. It'll just help you formulate your thoughts, and it's really hard in this time to have you come up with the right words to say. These are all things that we know what to say and how to do as far as talking with the vendors. We don't necessarily know the right things to do when it comes to making decisions during the COVID-19, but we do have some tips and tricks that we can help you with. So I will link that in the description below. And thank you so much, you guys. Keep your head up. There's a quote that I love. It is, things change, but love remains. And it is so true. No matter what, you're going to marry the love of your life, whether it be now or next year. So just hang in there and things will get better.